Good morning, and welcome to another episode of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm B.C. Cloutier, Chairman of Action for Life, and this is Father Michael Orsi. Hello, Father.
My friend, how you doing?
I'm doing
great. Are you getting ready for your turkey?
Absolutely. Well,
don't look at me that way.
I'm not, but Gina is.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's a nice time for Publix.
Not for the turkeys, though.
And next weekend, a lot of football, a lot of time off. This is a kind of a fun time of year, Father.
You know, I'll tell you something, though. This Thanksgiving, the 28th, right? Yeah.
Yes.
It comes so close to Christmas. You barely have time to digest your turkey.
It always does, doesn't it?
Well,
it's
this
just,
one is really in. Yeah.
I'm still astounded by the fact that before Labor Day, you go into retail stores and see Halloween decorations.
Oh, it's amazing. It's just amazing. Yeah.
And they get those down. They just skip over Thanksgiving. They go right to Christmas decorations. Anyway, we have an interesting topic this morning. There is a survey that was conducted by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, which is a First Amendment focused nonprofit, as you can probably discern. The result is this: more than half of Americans think the First Amendment provides too many rights. 53% agree with the statement, the First Amendment goes too far in the rights it guarantees. Now, here's the interesting thing. It's fairly balanced. 60% of Democrats think the First Amendment could go too far, and 52% of Republicans feel the same way. The survey indicated that many Americans are concerned about the security of free speech rights, yet they're also eager to censor speech that they personally find distasteful. The person who led the survey said, and I quote, "Americans have little tolerance for certain forms of protected speech and a lot of tolerance for unprotected conduct, when it should be the other way around." Mm-hmm. We're obviously talking about X and TikTok and Facebook and, the whole bunch of them, which really calls our First Amendment rights into question. Now, you're an absolutist when it comes to the First Amendment.
First Amendment, as a matter of fact, Jonathan Turley, one of the great legal scholars in America, he agrees with me. He concurs with me.
Well, now we have two great legal scholars.
He wrote a book, The First Amendment, The Absolute Freedom, something like that. But it's a great book. And he talks about how important it is that we maintain that First Amendment.
So, this reminds me of the old point counterpoint on 60 Minutes. Mm-hmm. Remember with Shana and...
Oh, Shana, you ignorant slut.
Anyway, I think that maybe we have taken the First Amendment too far. Mm-hmm. Now, where do we draw the line? That's above my pay grade. But it seems to me that we are allowing a lot of free speech that is very, very, very damaging. Emotionally damaging. You look at the rate of depression and the rate of suicide with our young people. That's because we're allowing people to say anything they want, anytime they want, about any subject that they choose. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's a concern. Now, I also have a concern that, we have freedom of expression in this country, and it's an important right. But is there a middle ground?
As you said, I'm an absolutist on this, because who determines what is good and what is not good? Now, believe me, folks, I don't like a lot of the things that I hear or read or see based on somebody being abusive in their speech, proclaiming things that are detrimental to America. These things, naturally, for me, I find them to be repulsive. But I defend the right of a person to say that, because somebody could say the same thing about me someday that I find what you're saying to be offensive. Now, of course, free speech is not unlimited. We know you cannot just decide to yell fire in a theater. And that's always been understood, that there are certain things that are just off limits because they are dangerous. On the other hand, for the most part, if somebody is expressing an opinion, and I might find the opinion offensive, and that was a big term for a long time, I'm offended, I'm offended. Well, I could simply say in a group or at a discussion, I find abortion to be immoral. I could say, well, I think that homosexual relationships are immoral. Somebody could say, I'm offended. And then could somebody take away my right to speak what I believe to be true?
I don't disagree with that. And but with that said, I look at some of the demonstrations that have occurred, are occurring, and have occurred in America in the recent past.
Right.
Charlottesville, et cetera, right? And sometimes I think to myself, the police should just go in there and bust some heads and tell these people, you can't say that. You are denigrating America. And yet, I know that that's not a practical solution.
No, it's never been. We've always recognized free speech, okay? That's, free speech, freedom of religion, they are important part of America. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and freedom to redress government. But they are very important issues. Now, let me get back to that.
Okay.
You just cannot go into the streets and commit crimes. You can say what you want. Peaceful assembly. It's peaceful assembly. But if you become violent and you begin to break the law, then you have to be stopped, especially if you're dangerous. And you could be arrested for that. And that's always been true, too. But we do have to respect the right of freedom of assembly and freedom of speech. They're very, very important. And the right to demonstrate, peacefully demonstrate.
And that may be the issue. But, I think back to not that long ago when saying damn on radio or TV was verboten.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And on those rare occasions when it happened, it was bleeped out. Even Johnny Carson, 11:30 at night. So the law hasn't changed. And this maybe goes back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago in terms of morality. Our expectations have changed. The media and Hollywood have continued to push the envelope closer and closer to the edge. And I fear that we may have fallen over the edge with social media.
We certainly may have with social media. But how do you control social media? Again, you have to be open to different opinions and different ways of expression. Social media lends itself to a lot of good, but also to a lot of harm, the things that people say on social media. We have to be discerning as to what we are listening to, and for parents especially, they have to be discerning as to what their children are viewing on social media. If I were a parent, I would say, you're not going to see TikTok. Get that off. We're not going to take a look at Instagram. And we have in the state of Florida where the governor said, and he signed a bill, that people under 16 years old have to have parental consent to have certain apps on their cell phones and computers. I think that that's a good thing. I think that parents have that responsibility. You were talking about in the old days, when you were in radio, and there would be certain standards that had to be met regarding expression. FCC had those rules out there. And again, we talked about this numerous times in the past about culture, culture determining what is right, what is wrong, what I can say, what I can't say. And it seems that the barriers have come down more and more. Yeah. I think to try to reinstate them at this point, is there still an FCC?
Yeah, they don't do anything.
Yeah, I've never heard them,
Well, they're working on net neutrality, and I think they've thrown the towel in on radio and TV. They don't seem to do much of anything with broadcast media these days.
Yeah, I don't hear much about it at all.
I do have one, what I think might be a viable solution, and that is, with regard to social media, if everyone had to identify themselves, if, and I do, I'm on X as BC Cloutier, it might reduce a lot of snarky comments. If, it's been said many times, people would never say that to the other person's face, but they'll say it on social media. I go along with that. I think that's probably true.
If you could do it, can you do it?
If we could force people to identify themselves on social media, which means they'd have one account instead of 5, et cetera, that might take away some of the vitriol that exists.
Yes. Not only is some of the vitriol, very, very crude, it's offensive, it's intimidating.
And a lot of it is not true.
And not true. And I talked about that in church a couple of weeks ago. Calumny and detraction. I talked about it insofar as individual calumny and detraction, but also political calumny and detraction as to what goes on in the political arena. But certainly you have people on the internet saying some terrible things, and it's led to some disastrous results in the life of young people, up to and including suicide. So yeah, it's a difficult world.
Well, and another one of my concerns, the Taylor Swift thing in Belgium, was it?
Yeah.
Where these young kids were radicalized online and decided to take, this insane action. Fortunately, they were foiled, but. That is as a result of materials that were posted on YouTube and other places that are permitted because of freedom of speech, right?
Yeah.
And Elon Musk, who frankly I admire, has said about X, hey, let everybody say whatever they want to. It's the town square.
Right.
He's taken a lot of blowback for that.
Well, I think he got involved with X when it was Twitter because he saw that there was censoring taking place and it was leaning all toward the left wing. And he said, wait a minute, we have to be fair and let there be. And folks, I love the open marketplace of ideas. I love it. Having come from an academic background, I like the give and take. But it always should take place in a refined and dignified manner. People have lost that sense. Now, if you believe that people can carry on a conversation, a refined and dignified manner, then we have something to build a good and a better society where people's rights and freedoms are recognized. And sometimes somebody might make a very good argument about something that, I never thought of it that way.
Right.
Or maybe we can do this differently. So I think that although social media has some drawbacks, it also can be very, very beneficial. But like anything else, we talked about the children, teenagers, you do need some adult supervision because a young person is not able to discern which is right, which is wrong, which is truth, which is a lie.
And therein lies the problem.
Right. So let me just say this, folks. Look at that First Amendment. It is so important. Jonathan Turley's book, how essential it is. It's freedom of religion. And it means freedom of religion. That way you can worship God any way you want to worship God. And it's a protection against the state taking over religion, right? And it's a freedom of speech to say what you want. But remember, when you speak, again, it has to be in a civil way. And it's not unlimited insofar as you can't speak in such a way as to create a dangerous environment. Fire in a movie theater. Press. The press should be out there and should be telling a story, and from different points of view. I read, I don't know how many papers a day, 3 or 4 papers a day, and it's just amazing. I can read the New York Times, and then I can read the Wall Street Journal.
Same story, different slant.
Different, exactly, a different slant. Okay, and there are others that I'm reading online. So I want both sides of the story and the middle, or sometimes somebody might say, gee, this is off the wall. Where did this come from? But there might be something in there for me. And the other, we would talk about, freedom of assembly, that we do have a right to assemble, to protest peacefully. And we have also a right to redress government. In other words, if we feel we are being offended or oppressed by the government, we have a right to protest that and to present our case to the government. So it's a wonderful amendment. I mean, I love it with all my heart.
Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this. But for the moment, I'd like to talk to you about the expense of airing this program. You know, many people don't realize how expensive it is to produce this program and to get it on the air. Would you care to guess? It's about $3,000 per week. We think that's a reasonable expenditure, but obviously it's an expensive one. So we need to ask for your help. If you'll go to actionforlife.org and click on the donate button, it would be greatly appreciated. Now, you can donate once or you can donate each month, and we certainly have viewers who do both. We appreciate that. Please take time now to visit actionforlife.org and click on the donate button. Thank you so much for your support, and may God bless you always.
Hey gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So, YouTube and you make a fine couple.
Welcome back to A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm B.C. Cloutier. We're talking about the First Amendment today, and it's a lot more complicated than just, well, we have freedom of expression. One of the things that I think is dividing us in this country, my own personal opinion, is that all media, or nearly all media, has become an echo chamber. Mm-hmm. So even on X, where they promote the idea of freewheeling discussion, what happens is the people that follow you are the people that concur with your viewpoint, right? In the print business, you know, Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, fairly moderate. I mean, conservative, but fairly moderate. Right. And then we get to Epic Times, et cetera, right? Television. I mean, watch Fox and CBS side by side. Right. you don't even think they're telling the same story.
No. Yeah.
And so, these the people that control the media, whether it's online or broadcast or print, are slanting things in a certain direction, and that's not healthy for our society. Because, as you point out, we should all be able to see varied points of view. Now, we have our own point of view, but it's much easier to determine your point of view when you hear what the other guy has to say.
Right.
You say, well, that's interesting. I hadn't really looked at it from that point of view.
Yeah. And, sometimes you might find out there might be some, for example, some politician who you might not like, might be on the other side of the fence. Every once in a while, you're going to find something that person might say, yeah, that's pretty good. He's right or she's right on that. So you do need, I think, a tremendous space to listen to all the voices that are out there, especially in our society today. You're not going to be just limiting yourself to, a television set with the
rabbit ears. With the aluminum foil.
Oh, hold it, stand right there. So, and I think the more media we have, in my opinion, the more we have, the better off we are. The tragedy would come in if you begin to limit the media as the communist countries do. And you have, Pravda, and that's all you have, or Vestia, and that's a
or the
party
People's
organ.
Daily.
People's Daily, yes. It becomes a government organ. Same thing, with the state-sponsored television and radio. You can only get what they want you to hear. So you don't want to fall into that, and that would depend who's in office.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
And if you get into a communist government, well, there's only going to be one party in office, and for a long time. They don't go away, folks. They don't get voted out.
Well, and, there goes religion, there goes freedom of speech. Just let's not go there. Although it feels to me like we're awfully close, but.
I agree. In communist countries, the first thing to go is religion, because religion gives you a sense of, your own dignity and your own rights. Once you get rid of religion, then all of a sudden you are a creature of the state, and the state will tell you what you could do and what you can't do, what you can listen to, what you can read. And those are, in a lot of the communist countries, you can't even bring a Bible into the country. You bring a Bible into North Korea and they find it, goodbye, you are publicly executed.
Well, and, we read about extremes in the press in other governments. But, for example, there was this, she's a dual Russian-U.S. citizen journalist who donated what amounts to $50 to a Ukraine fund.
Right.
And they just gave her 15 years in jail in Russia. We definitely don't want to go there, do we?
No, Comrade Vladimir, you're going to go to jail if you violate what the state thinks you should say and do.
Now, Tucker Carlson says that it's a very orderly, Moscow at least, a very orderly place, cleanest city he's ever been to. And he's not promoting Russia per se, but I think he did point out that there are some good things that are occurring in Russia these days. They're just a little heavy-handed in how they accomplish it.
Right.
I wish that our cities were clean and safe. But that's, I guess, we have to deal with that one issue at a time.
Right. When you get to an authoritarian country, a totalitarian state, all of the freedoms begin to get limited. Mm-hmm. So if the lady gave, $50 to Ukraine, she's going to go to jail. And 15 years is a long time for $50. But that's, the way that the totalitarian government says, don't you dare step out of line. Don't you dare think differently. Or, argument, you're not being patriotic.
Well, and I think you can make that argument, but, we're back to where we were. There's an extreme in Russia that she's not being patriotic. it seems to me that, first of all, even if there was some punishment for giving $50 to the enemy, and they consider Ukraine their enemy, that would be a weekend in jail or something similar to that, right? Or maybe you'd have to give $150 to the Russian government. I don't know, but on the other hand, the stuff that we permit in America, a lot of it based on the First Amendment, is approaching insanity. The open use of drugs, people defecating on the street, those kinds of things just shouldn't be tolerated. And yet, someone somewhere has determined that, well, they're victimless crimes, and they're just expressing themselves.
Yeah, one day I was walking down the street in Manhattan with a woman, very nice woman, who I knew for a long time, and some man defecated in the street, obviously a homeless person. And I said to her, gee, that's disgusting. I said, that's terrible. And she said, if you have no home, what else is he going to do? And it made me think again about how important it is that we got to look at each circumstance and try to understand why this is happening and what we could do not to make it happen.
Well, it brings up another point, and that is that she gave you a very different viewpoint from your own.
Exactly.
And it made you think, gee, maybe there is something, what could we do? What should we do?
Yeah. In Naples, in Florida, the governor signed a bill that people can't sleep on the streets. And we're trying to come to grips with this in Naples. We have people that live out in the woods, and I'm sure from time to time people find themselves sleeping on the sidewalk. Do we arrest them? Or are we going to be able to take them into a shelter and give them a place to stay? Because to sleep on the street would be a crime, but we need a place to put them. And we're working on that with the police and with the politicians and St. Matthew's House. So, folks, we're working on it.
And working on affordable housing besides,
You
right?
better believe it. We call workplace housing. And Senator Pasidomo has been working very hard on that. So good things are happening. In Naples.
Well, Father, there's a lot of good things happening, and it starts with you.
Oh, my gosh. I don't know about that. It might end with me.
Thanks for joining us, and we hope you'll be here again next week for a conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. Until next week, have a great week, and God bless.